people tend to think that marketing is, it's media publications, it's events and trade shows and things of that sort, right? But we have to realize that marketing is so much more than that, right? Marketing should be the portion of the business that actually helps accelerate and drive the commercial side of the business, which is what we would refer to as sales, right?
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Wisenetix Podcast. I'm glad to have you here with us today again. And today I have Adam Burnseed from Adisseo as our guest speaker. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Ricardo. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So, Adam, this is a podcast where we talk a little bit about, communication, business strategies, and lots of relevant things for people that are working in the industry and making the ag industry happen. If you want to give us a brief introduction on your side.
Yeah, that'd be great. So as you had mentioned, my name's Adam Burnseed. I work for Adisseo here in North America. Been with them for collectively 5 years now, and I work as the Director of Business Development and Marketing for monogastric specialties.
So Adisseo is a great partner here with us at Wisenetix, and we've been accomplishing great things together. So I'm really glad to have you here today for us to talk a little bit on the strategies you guys are applying, how you deal and how you face and work with your strategies, tactics, and the work you're doing to make Adisseo the great brand that it is, and gaining being present in the market like you guys have been doing for the past few years.
Right.
So it will be great to learn more about the work you're doing. Just before we jump into our usual business conversation, for the audience to know you better, could you share a little bit more about yourself? And we like to ask, what are your top 3 experiences in life, personal or professional, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I think one of the interesting things about myself, but also my professional career is since entering the workforce after college, so I graduated in 2003. I've only ever worked for international animal health and nutrition companies, and that's allowed me to get a broad collection of experiences personally and professionally. So not only traveling for work, but also being able to enjoy some of the personal attributes that come with those global travels as well. So I think collectively having the professional work experience, but also the personal experience that comes with the global business, to me it's a great thing, and I've really enjoyed doing that as well. Some of the things that also I think comes along with that is being able to experience every company that I've ever worked for, and there's been several on the global side. They operate so very differently. Some of them have been privately owned, some of them are publicly owned. So being able to kind of gather from that collection of experiences about how is business done in the private sector, also in the in the sector where we're publicly traded and things of that sort. So it's been a nice journey the last 20 years, and certainly looking forward to the next 20 as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I can totally relate with the traveling part of the of the experiences and the importance they have for our personal and professional growth.
Yeah.
Myself, I had the opportunity to travel a little bit around the world, work in different countries, and I believe interacting with people from different cultures. That's also that's something that always brings a lot to personal growth, and helping us to have a better view about the world and
Absolutely.
how things actually work in different places and different cultures.
Sure.
And with your extensive career experience, thinking about the position you are today at Adisseo, how would your parents describe what you do today?
That's actually a really funny question, and it's also one of the things that we often get asked when we're sitting next to somebody at in an airport or sitting on the plane traveling somewhere. It's like they ask, "What do you do?" And it's funny, if I were to ask my parents, "How would you describe what I do?" They would probably say, "You feed chickens," right? But it's so much. It's so much more than that, right? Because we're further removed, right? So in other words, our customers are the producers who end up selling product to us as the final consumer through a supermarket or whatever that case may be. So yeah, I think they would say, you feed chickens. And the answer to that is pretty true, but it's a lot more than that, and it's further removed than just feeding chickens.
Wow, you you do a lot of things in the background, so at the end we can feed chickens, so chickens can, become our meal.
Absolutely.
And Adam, so we've talked before, jumping on this recording, and one thing that you shared with me is, your background. You started first with a more technical background in animal science, but today you are operating in a job position, in a role where you are required with a knowledge that is, uh, it goes beyond the scientific, right? You
Sure.
need to learn more about business, about communication, about marketing, about sales, and all of that. Uh, can you share a few insights with us from your career path, your career experience on how this experience and this transition from animal science to the business side of things, how these things led you to your current role at Adisseo?
Yeah, sure. So I knew whenever I graduated with an animal science degree, I had an emphasis in livestock management, but also in animal biology, which would have been the track going to vet school, right? But I also knew that I didn't necessarily want to go to graduate school for either nutrition or either for veterinary medicine. I really wanted to get the business experience on how I took what was a passion and also become an education and transfer that over into how do I put a business component on that to actually work on feeding the world, things of that nature. So so when I graduated from school, I did go to work for Alltech initially, and I worked in sales at Alltech for almost 9 years. Transitioned from Alltech sales over to DSM animal nutrition and health sales. And so again, that collection of experiences, one does build upon the other. It is a very much a compounded transition there. But I also knew that those are the kinds of global companies you really want to work with to be able to get that business expertise. A lot of these companies that I've worked for and even work for now, we continuously invest in employee education. So once we get hired, it's not just the end all be all. You want to go for companies where you can continue to foster professional development and growth and take you into other career paths that maybe you didn't think about initially or just even didn't know they even existed. So that's actually how I transitioned from sales over into the business side of things, was just because I was working with the right people, the right companies, and in the right settings to be able to foster that professional growth in the way of business development, but also being afforded the opportunities through several companies to take other courses and continuing education also in and around business development, marketing expertise, strategy, things of that sort. So there's the internal professional component, but there's also the external component that's been afforded to me because of the companies that I have worked for.
So Adam, you've worked in great companies, huge companies in the industry, and they all put a great effort on the education of their employees and their development, personal and professional development. If you take some distance and look not only to these huge companies but the market in general, do you see companies also looking after education and really bringing their employees, their partners to their best potential? How do you see this in the industry?
It's actually well accepted and quite common that regardless of the size and scope of the company, companies really want to bring on the best talent that they possibly can, but they also want to continue to be able to further develop that person. Right? They realize that the more that they make available to that individual in the way of resources, and in this case, education as well, they realize that the more that they can develop that individual, the more productive they're going to be back for the company as well. Right? So the investment in the employee is a continuous investment. It's from the time that employee is hired on. It's the onboarding process. It's mentorships, whatever they might be able to offer that employee. But it's a continuous investment that does pay off over time. So we look at it the same way that we would look at at a banking or a savings account. Right? We have to make an investment to get a return on the backside. And these people that we hire, persons like myself and even yourself, we are the monetary exchange that they invest in and then get a return back out of as well.
So, education is one piece of the strategy, right? And the strategy plays a pivotal role in any company's growth, right? I wonder if you can explain to the audience how do you see the importance of well-established strategies for a business, to grow, and especially how do you see this in the animal nutrition industry?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite conversations to be had in and around the role and the function of marketing and how that connects and aligns with sales, and then all the other managerial parts of the business as well. So typically speaking, it's interesting to be able to follow not just what we do as an organization, but also what other companies like us do in this particular industry. How do they position themselves, right? So people tend to think that marketing is, it's media publications, it's events and trade shows and things of that sort, right? But we have to realize that marketing is so much more than that, right? Marketing should be the portion of the business that actually helps accelerate and drive the commercial side of the business, which is what we would refer to as sales, right? So we would say that maybe companies like Adisseo are marketing led, but sales driven, right? Because marketing is so much more than just advertisements and attending events and activities. It is truly the strategic part of the business, and that strategy and that plan has to be in place, and then it has to be a long-term strategy to be able to deliver upon this year's budget, but also setting the pace for the budgeting processes for years to come. So strategy is much more than just the tactical components that make up the marketing plan overall. So there is a lot more to it than what people realize. We also see that some other companies have yet to really grasp onto what is a true marketing strategy, but that also gives us some leverage in our position in the industry as well. But overall, I think most companies do a fairly good job on how they brand themselves and put themselves in the market. But I think these companies, us included, also need to be thinking about more of a long term process. We used to think about, what is that 5 year plan? But we also learned a lot over the COVID years that 5 year plans can fall apart and can be wasted in a certain amount of time. So for us, it's really more thinking about what does that 10 year, that 15 years look like for us down the road, and what we do today really does set the foundation for how our commercial teams execute and deliver on the years to come as well, right? In the industry that we work in, sales cycles are exceedingly longer than like the pharma industry, right? We see sales cycles, on a good day, maybe it's 1 year, but it's not uncommon for sales processes to take anywhere from 2 to 4 years to deliver upon business with some of the big integrated companies that we work with here in North America as well.
This is something since I got into this industry and I'm learning more about it. Um, like sales cycle for us also usually, yeah, it might be a few months, but it might be a few years also. There are companies that I have been in
Right.
touch that we've been talking about ideas and implementing, the new partnerships, and we understand that they take time. One thing that we have discussed in the past is exactly that, the importance of long-term planning, long-term thinking, and also I want to create a connection here of how usually business work, especially in the marketing department in the industry. You always have that budget for the year where you need to decide, hey, what are we doing next year, where we are putting our money, which is basically in which tactics are we are we investing, right?
Investing. Right.
Which media platforms and those sort of things. And the approach you guys had, you know, since we started talking and since I've been learning more about Adisseo and how you guys work, is that although you have that, yearly planning, it goes beyond that. It's not there's not necessarily a barrier or a restriction that will make it not possible for you guys to invest on something that is longer, having this longer planning line of thought. Can you share a little bit more how you guys see and how you apply these long-term strategies? Do you have any tips for the audience when they need to do this long-term planning? How should they start? How should they do it?
Yeah, that's this is something that is critically important to every organization, but it's also at the core of our marketing strategy as well. It's in our general market, and let's just say North America in particular, right? We're a very established market, a very saturated market because of the maturity of it, right? And we're talking food animal in particular here. If the rate of the market is growing at 2 to 3% in terms of organic growth, that's not enough for companies, and shareholders are also not going to be satisfied with a 2 to 3% rate of return. Right? That's the organic growth that's going to come naturally. Right? We really want to see. Our organization, we will also want to see our counterparts flourish as well, right? We do better, they do better, the end users also do better too. We really want to be growing anywhere between 5 to 10, or even higher, a higher rate of growth, if at all possible. So strategy is critically important for thinking about how do you achieve that rate of growth. Because if you're growing and you want to grow at that particular rate, you're actually taking business from a lot of your competitors if you're in a developed market like we are, or if you're in some of these younger growing markets like we tend to see in like the Asia Pacific region, for example. Maybe it's more about market development, right? Maybe those markets don't currently exist, but you still have to have, a higher rate of growth and a return to the shareholders. So you have to be able to develop those markets quickly as well. So looking at, 2 to 3, even 5 years gives you a trajectory, that you want to, aim for, where you want to look at it, where you want to look at being. But if you're looking at trying to grow upwards of 10 to 15%, as we have here the last 2 years in North America, and that is because of the strategy that we have in place, to be able to maintain or even accelerate in that case, you have to be thinking further on, right? Like, that the entire market is really not your target market, right? That's where it comes into. I have to have the right mix of products for the right mix of customers with a given price that's acceptable, that also offers them a higher rate of return on their investment. It's all those things that are really critical components on being able to deliver a high rate of growth, but to be able to also sustain that rate of growth over a longer period of time. So for us, particularly in Adisseo, 5 year plans don't really work for us anymore. It's that 5 year plan is going to be over very, very quickly. So even though it's important for helping us with the budgeting process, being able to have that level of visibility and that insight about what do the markets look like now versus what do we expect the markets to look like in 5, 10, 15 years is very important, because that's where we want to be. That's the direction we want to grow to, whether that is through innovation or technology acquisitions, things of that sort. So all those things are critical components, but it also is a very, very time involved process too. So short term strategy is important, but it's the long term strategy that is even more important to think about the future and growth of our business.
Two things that you said caught my attention, especially, um, which is first, you need to have the right mix of products and for the right mix of customers um, at a decent pricing, right? Um, and that gives me the idea of like, hey, the right mix of customers. So not necessarily everyone that is a possible customer should be a customer, right? Doesn't
That's
mean
right.
that because a producer or anyone can buy from you, they should buy from you, right? Because I don't know, maybe that will be you spend a lot of energy on the wrong customers, anything like that. So I wanted to explore a little bit more how you see this, establishing an ideal profile of customer and how Adisseo works with that. And the second question I have before we jump to this one, it's a question slash a curiosity. You mentioned like markets that are being developed, like in Asia and so on. Do you guys see like any way you Adisseo as a company or yeah, nutrition animal nutrition companies can push demand in order to grow those markets, or how do you work with the business development in those areas where the market is not established yet? But you can start to any of the questions, the right customers. or the business development you choose?
Yeah, so let's go back to the original, to the first question you posed, is about the customer matrix, right? And this is something that I can say is, having a sales background myself, having spent nearly 15 years in the sales industry myself. What's incredibly hard for a sales guy is to understand when to let go, right? So we don't have an infinite amount of money, we don't have an infinite amount of resources, and we don't have an infinite amount of time, right? So it's important for us to look at what is the portfolio that the organization that we have, what does the portfolio have to offer to the end user, and how do we select the right mix of customers within particular animal species groups to be able to deliver upon selling this portfolio of products. And so it is the thrill of the ability to close sales that really drive sales guys, right? But they also have to be thinking more about, it's not just about having a low price to be able to get that sale. It's for us in particular, we're not going to be, and we are not, and have not, and will not be the cheapest in the market either, right? But because we're not, we choose the right mix of customers that actually enjoy having a business relationship that also delivers value above and beyond a product and a price, right? We think about what are the other services that come to it. And at the end of the day, it's also all about relationships, right? People like to do business with people as long as they work for and they represent a reputable company as well. And I think that's something that's really played well for us over the last dozen years or so. But to be able to get that sales guy to think about, it's okay to fire a customer, and that's absolute shock to them. It's also okay to say no, thank you, I'm not going to participate in this bid process. And it's also okay to say, hey, it's just not the kind of business we're interested in doing. Help that person understand why that is. I think that they respect your answers in those cases, and because you actually then defined what is the product, what is the industry, who are the particular customers, then you start piecing those things together, and that's actually how you drive your business forward. So we've done a lot of those kinds of activities over the last handful of years for us. It has really driven the trajectory of our specialties business for North America. We drive our specialties business separate from what we call performance products, which is more or less like the commodity side of the business. And because the specialties business is really the future of the growth of Adisseo, but also of other companies that we see as well, it's understanding all those matrices that come to build and help a company develop the strategy to deliver upon this accelerated rate of growth, but also establishing the long-term partnerships that takes the highs and the lows out of our commodity markets as well. So there's definitely a lot of thought processes that go into that.
And when it comes to the business development in this, markets to be explored, how do you guys work with that?
So for us, we look at the side of our business in terms of business development and marketing strategy. We can tell you for our markets on any given day what is the size and scope of all of our food animal groups, right? So we break it apart and look at, it's not just poultry for us. We run it very separately in terms of broilers, layers, and turkeys, understanding who are the players in those markets, what is their relative value. And it's easy for us to really kind of determine that. We use a combination of other market available reports, but also intel, which comes to us a lot of times from our sales managers. So we know exactly what is the relevant value of each of these individual customers for each of the individual products at a given sales price as well. So that really helps us kind of determine if we want to develop this market, who are the persons being the target customers that are of greatest interest to us. But it also helps us define who is not part of that target market, right? For us to be able to build those relationships based on value and trust and responsibility. We really see that, for our specialties business, we don't play in the areas where people want to go through the bid processes, right? That really signals that they're looking for a product to deliver a specific a return, but they want it at a very, very cheap cost. But we also realize That's not where we want to play and do business, right? And this is the hard thing for some of the business people to be able to understand. We want to let the competition have that side of the business, right? Because they're not making any money. And by not making any money, you're not reinvesting in business development or, sorry, product development. You're not investing into acquisitions, not at the rate of return at which a company like Adisseo would really want to do, right? So we want to make sure that we continue to make enough money to be able to offer exceptional products to the industry that offer a greater return on investment than our competitors, but also allow us to reinvest in our business to continue to bring these kinds of technologies to the industries that we service and support as well.
Absolutely. My next question I was planning was, for us to dive a little bit deeper into the differences of the commodities versus specialities products. But I
Right.
think you gave us a great overview on how you guys look at those two different segments. Um, so you know, keeping the conversation in terms of strategies, could you share some examples of strategic initiatives or decisions that you at Adisseo and with your team had made and had a great and significant impact in the company? Like anything you would like to highlight from the past few years?
Yeah, so the past few years, as we know, and still today, can be very, very challenging for customers and companies like ours as well. But if we think about it, even going back 4 years ago when COVID hit, it really put a lot of pressure on us as an organization, but also on our customers, our counterparts, our competition as well. We were all going through a lot of the same struggles because it was uncharted territory, right? These are things that we've never had to experience before. Didn't necessarily maybe have SOPs in place on how to deal with it if it ever happened, but we had to learn and react very quickly, and quickly we did as well. So because of the things that we were forced to have to evaluate, right? Looking at, okay, like what is that current customer base? What does that profitability level look like? Supply chain obviously was under tremendous pressure. So thinking about, okay, we may not be able to get all the product that we need to service the customer base that we have now. How do we look at allocations? Or if it's a necessity, how do we look at what are the customers that we need to retain versus the customers that maybe perhaps unfortunately we need to let go because of a lack of product availability as well. So one of the things that we tried not to do, and we had to in some cases, was also offering price increases. It's interesting, say enzymes for example, right? Adisseo created the NSPA's marketplace until COVID, not just for us ourselves, but never ever in the history of enzymes has the price ever gone up. Every year it just slowly comes down to, right? We actually had to execute a price increase for enzymes, for example, but we met that execution with 100% adoption, no pushback from the customers because of the way that we actually manage that relationship, but also that business as well. So to try to continue to grow with that at a high rate over a period of time where we didn't even know exactly what the future of supply chain production, any of these things look like, from 2021 to 2022. So right during those the beginning of the COVID years, we actually grew our specialties business roughly 10% here in North America, and then from 22 to 23, we grew at roughly 16%. And much of that has come from the way that we actually look at the matrix between customers, products, price, things of that sort. And a lot of that was achieved with very little price increase to the end user. Some of the other initiatives that we did was also look at, our marketing strategy itself. Where are there places that we can cut that may not be delivering the greatest return for our investment? Right, marketing is not a cheap part of the business. It's also typically tends to be the part of the business that whose budget gets cut first when things do get tight. So there are some things that we did with our marketing strategy that we eliminated, that we felt like maybe didn't have a great ROI for us. And we were actually very successful on how we chose to adapt our marketing strategy, obviously working very closely with persons like yourself and other parts in Wisenetix, doing less print type media. And all those things have actually accelerated the rate of growth for us. But it has been a challenge the last 4 years for sure. But it's been a great learning process for us because those are some things that we didn't realize we were missing out on or that we need to be doing better. So being forced through those challenges actually were very good for us, and I think it's put us on a great path for the next handful of years on how we work with our customers here in North America.
Awesome. You gave us a good sense on how you guys approach marketing and incorporate it in your business strategies. One thing I'm curious about, taking this part of, hey, there's COVID, something that you've never faced. Uh, Marketing budget always the first one to be cut. We know that well. A lot of what we do in the marketing and communication, of course, we always look at numbers, especially now, right? Intel data is so important for us to make decisions. Every day we're learning that, right?
Yes.
Um, and we see this within Wisenetix also as something essential. On the other hand, when we're talking about communication, some things are not very easily measured, right? How do you guys do you work with a gut feeling? How do you work with to make decisions on, hey, you had to cut a few things, maybe you reduce the offline
Sure.
printing and those sort of things. How do you manage that, and how do you put the right weight on, I'm getting numbers for that, like numbers of impressions and plays and those sort of things,
Right. Right.
versus, hey, maybe I'm building something here that I cannot measure because it's brand related, it's brand equity or something like that.
Sure.
Although brand equity is measurable, it's not something easy to do. So how do you face those things?
I think you actually said it really well when you said maybe it is a gut feeling. There are some things that are we can put the pencil to the paper and clearly defined. We spent X amount of money to go towards this particular tactical component. And because of that, we were able to deliver X amount of dollars in sales. Some things are measurable, but it's not common, right? A lot of the things that we do in marketing don't have a direct relation. So, for example, you and I were just chatting a little bit earlier about IPPE. What does IPPE cost an organization? The amount of money that we spend at a show like IPPE, we don't expect to be able to deliver a set amount of business at that show. Yes, part of us, we do execute contracts, but those are things that have also been in discussions and been in the play for a long time, months, maybe even years prior to, right? So it's hard to make a direct connection between this particular tactical event delivered this particular set amount of business, right? And because of that, that's where your gut feel comes into it, right? You have to be able to experience these types of things sometimes for a number of years to be able to say, I'm going to spend X amount of money to do this, but I know what it's going to do for my business down the road. So it may not be an immediate return. It may be a longer term investment, but that's where that gut check comes into place. I know I can't measure it, but I know that history tells me that something is there, right? My business continues to grow because I made these particular investments back here on the backside. It's really difficult to attend something, whatever this may be, and then next year say, "Oh, I've got to cut my budget and I'm going to cut it out." You've really not been able to experience yet what you did that prior year for the first time. It may very well pay off for the business, but you've not given it time to really grow and develop. You've not been there subsequent years to be able to establish those relationships and connections that will lead to the business down the road. So it's very hard in those cases to be able to substantiate why you need those monies. How do you fight for an allocated marketing budget? But you have to be able to demonstrate, if I am able to take X amount of monies and invest it across these things, look at what the rate of return is on the sales side, right? That's actually how you can more appropriately measure, is your marketing strategy working? or is it not? But it really is kind of gets credence too. It's that longer term investment. It's that longer term vision that's required to drive that business. And when we look at where we're going to be 5 and 10 years from now, we can say whether what we did the previous years was a wise investment or not. So I would say a lot of this is still to be determined. But given the rate of growth that we've had over the last handful of years, given the challenges that we've had, I certainly think we're moving in the right direction. And so it tends to be working for us anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, my my background is in communication, visual communication, design, and branding. So I remember this time I was doing branding, this branding project, which all every time starts with a immersion in an immersion phase, where you're basically trying to discover more things, doing interviews, research and all of that. And I was interviewing a stakeholder, actually a customer from the company, and I was like, hey, what made you and it was a media company, what made you choose like to invest in those guys? And they the guy just told me, honestly, I'm not sure about it. I don't know why, but I know I need to invest in communication. I just don't know. Like I cannot see a direct return over the investment, but I know I need to be there. So that was his way of explaining on like, hey, maybe I cannot measure it now, especially on a yearly cycle,
Right.
right? But he understands like the value that is behind it. And another relation I did, another connection that I did based on your talk here is one thing that we do as a another side of our business is helping companies here at Wisenetix is helping companies to build and create their own podcasts, right? We have our own channels, our technical channels where we have a solid audience. We know they're solid products with good audience, good content, and everything. But some companies they want to create their own podcast, which we also see as something that in the future, like every company now has a website, a LinkedIn page, and those sort of things. We say that most companies will have podcasts as another way of to communicate to their audiences. But what we also see is that, and my opinion is, once you decide to go with such a solution, like, hey, we're going to create our own podcast, you need to have in mind that that's a long-term thing. It doesn't mean like, hey, I'm going to create a podcast, so I don't know, by the end of the year, our sales will increase 20% or anything like that.
Right.
It's a long-term game. It's a really long-term game. You don't build an audience from night to day, and creating this relationship with the audience and providing the value to them, and making your brand seen as an expert, as an authority in the market. It's something that takes time. So if you're willing to do this, which I think it's awesome, don't try to do like, hey, we did a year, we did a few episodes, we got to the end of we didn't see the results. I think it's really aligned to this point of view.
And that's a challenge for a lot of companies too, Ricardo, to measure and also help validate too, right? Marketing campaigns are run very differently from like the pharma industry comparative to like the nutrition industry that we work in, right? Whereas in pharma, they may execute multiple campaigns per year. Their sales cycle is also very different than our sales cycle, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So, and because our sales cycles are so long, we can't turn over the number of marketing campaigns that you would see like on the pharma side of the industry. And because of that, we know that when we start putting a marketing campaign together, it's a long-term investment as well, right? About the time that we are just sick and tired of seeing our messaging, we realize that the industry, being the customer, the target customers, they're just starting to take notice, right? So it is sometimes campaigns can be 1, 2, 3 years. Sometimes campaigns are part of that long term strategy. They're multiple years, right? Maybe you have like a hierarchy, an overarching theme, and we see this with some customers or some companies in the market do a great job at that, right? They have an overarching theme, and everything that they do builds upon it, but it also feeds directly into us. So it's in this case, 1 plus 1 really does equal 3, right? There's this compounded effort, but you have to give it a long time to be able to play itself out and see, what I invested in 21 and 22 may just come to the table for to fruition in 2024, right? So those are the things that you have to understand. You have to be patient. You have to be smart about your investments, but you also have to be able to recognize when are they working, when are they not working, and when you can expect they to be working as well. So a lot of it is it's not a quick one and done type thing. It's marketing is definitely it's long term strategy. Short term never really delivers the results that you're looking for.
And if you think about a B2C industry, I don't know, anything that you sell to customers where you can have everything is measurable and you can, I don't know, I have a website, I do a campaign, I can see the traffic, how many people clicked in the link, and how many people went through, the buying process. Everything is measurable. If you're looking at a B2B, especially animal nutrition or, the livestock industry in general, long sales cycles, multiple touch points. It's not they're not gonna buy something because necessarily they listen to a podcast or because they saw an ad or because they were in an event. It's probably a sum of all those efforts together
It
that
is.
will help them making a decision towards choosing your product and your brand.
Yep. I think that's you're exactly right with that.
Just for us to wrap up here, Adam, we're getting to the end of our conversation, unfortunately. Um, my last question is, coming back a little bit before we were talking about, sometimes choosing the right customers, firing a customer. Uh, Another thing that I learned working with Adisseo is that you guys have a great, how can I say that? You take a good care on how you're building your relationships. And I'm not only saying about
Definitely.
customers, but also about partners, how you're building this network and relationships. Can you give us some insights on how you guys identify and collaborate with right partners or right customers? Like how do you do this selection of who you want to interact with?
No, that's actually, I think, a fantastic question and a great way to wrap it up too. It's if we look at the evolution of our of the business that Adisseo is on the market. So I'm gonna go back and say it collectively. I've got 5 years here, but I've actually been here. This is my second time, right? So I worked for Adisseo a number of years ago. Left the organization to go to the pharma side. Really understood how much I enjoyed working on the nutrition side, and then so I came back to Adisseo 3 years ago. But even during the period of time in which I was here to begin with and where I'm at now, I see an evolution in the thought processes of even our customers, right? If you go back years ago, Adisseo is the company that developed the liquid methionine, right? Largest liquid methionine supplier in the world. And if you were to say to a customer 5 years ago, even, how do you classify Adisseo? Like if you were to, kind of label them, what does that look like? And they would say a supplier of methionine, right? And they were actually right. That's exactly what we were too. So if you look at our biggest, performance products, methionine and vitamins, right? But the future of this organization resides in specialties, and we attach the part of our specialties business to the backbone of our methionine business as well, right? So this is where we're solid. This is where we actually made our name in the industry. This is how customers were connecting to us. But we had to change that mindset. We didn't want to just be a supplier to the customer. We wanted to be a partner to the customer. And partnerships are developed based upon people first, but also having a collection of products, a portfolio of products that customers can pick and choose from that are important to them, that have a measurable return to them, right? Because let's look at it. Let's be real here. The customers that we're working with, every decision they make either makes them money or it costs them money. There's no in between here, right? So we need to be able to perform more times than not. And it's getting the confidence in us as an organization, in our people who service and support the customers, in the tools that we develop and the services that we bring to them. Partnerships are developed over a number of years. It's not a quick process as well. But I say that in the sense that if you go and if you ask some of those same customers, that we would have asked 5 years ago and said, Adisseo is a supplier to my business. I guarantee you now that 9 out of 10 are going to tell you Adisseo is a partner to our business. And it's because we choose to work with the right people. We choose to employ the right people. That human connection itself is critically important, right? It's again, people buy from people. But it's also ensuring that we have delivered on the things that we say to the customer, right? We mean what we say, and when we say it, we're going to do it, right? Customers connect with that, and that's an experience that takes them years to develop to be able to understand when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it, and they come to expect that from partners like Adisseo as well. So it is a long term evolution. It's not always been pretty by any means. Sometimes it is firing customers. Sometimes it's firing people in general. But it's important to be able to think about how do people connect with each other, and if you have a product that is relevant to their business that they have a need for and you can supply that, that's how you develop these partnerships, and that's how companies like Adisseo continues to grow at the rate of growth that we have been the last handful of years, and hopefully we'll continue to experience for many years to come as well.
That's not a podcast; it's a business class, relationship class. Loved it. Adam, so that was my last question when it comes like to our business conversations. Now, for really for wrapping up, three last questions. First one, what is a piece of advice you would give to someone starting their career, in the industry?
Yeah.
If it's in marketing, business, but starting in the agri industry in general.
Networking, it really is, and I hate to say it in this way, but it really is all about who you know, right? um, Putting yourself out there, going to career fairs if you're in college, even if you're in college, start going to these industry events and activities. We see a large number of student bodies at places like IPPE, at World Pork Expo, right? Like that's where they're starting to kind of get a feel for, this is the track that I'm pursuing in terms of my education, but these are the opportunities that actually exist in the market, right? Careers classes and universities are highly, highly productive and very influential. Having these career classes where persons even like myself would go in there and talk about, where were we? How do we get to where we know where we are? But even more importantly, what are the roles and functions that lie within these types of organizations, right? There's tons of things that we don't think about, like supply chain, like finance, like customer service. These are all critical components and necessities for organizations like ourselves, but also our colleagues and competitors alike. But it really does come to networking. It's starting early, getting out there, getting these internships, right? Internships, and I'll be real honest with you, it's a way for us to evaluate, do we want this person as a potential employee or not, right? It's being able to experience them as an individual and their work to figure out, do they have a long-term fit with the organization? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And at that point, it's also a good experience for the student to figure out, is this really what I want to do, or maybe it's not, but because I experienced it, I still want to work for this company, but I want to work in a different part of the business, not necessarily sales, maybe not necessarily marketing. So networking, first and foremost, critically important, but to also realize that your networking is a continuous evolution of your professional development, right? So this year for me made 19 years of going to IPPE. I always meet new people. I have a new set of experiences. I see things differently every year that I walk away on things that we want to do different the next year as well, right? It's also about, bringing this professional experience to our targeted customers when we go to these types of events. So it's continuous, right? It's realizing that it's not just a one and done type thing. We never quit learning, and never let your mind be stagnant. Always be thinking, and be thinking about how to continue to grow and develop as well.
I couldn't agree more. Definitely hit the main things, especially networking. That's essential. Uh, and I love the internships. That's a great opportunity for both sides. Learning again, learning if that's what you want to do, and also for the company to see if there is potential there or not.
Absolutely.
And any suggestions of books, movies, anything podcast, anything for the audience?
Yeah, sure. So there's one individual that I have grown to just love over the years. I'm talking about, you know, 20 years of watching this individual, but it's actually Seth Godin. And so he does a daily blog. And it's interesting because you immediately start picking up on what this guy says every day. And there are times you question, you'll be like, I think he actually works for my company because the information he puts out here, it's too relevant to what I'm doing or what I'm experiencing. Like he's got to work here, right? But so Seth Godin, definitely check him out. He is an amazing author. He's got a number of books out there now. Check them all out. They are wonderful. But that daily little blog as well, I think is highly relevant, and it certainly starts your day off on the right foot, but it also in terms of the way that we think about, what is it that he's trying to convey and how do we apply that to our everyday work as well. There's also another podcast that I really enjoyed. It's Jim Quick, and that's KWIK. He does little 5-minute blurts, but it's also a lot about critical thinking. So I learned something from him every time that I listen to him as well. So Jim Quick is probably one of the quickest but also easiest podcasts able to like listen to for 5 minutes and take away some pretty critical messages that you can put into application really on a daily basis as well. So yeah, love podcasts. I always say podcasts are easy. It's like it's the information highway, right? Wherever you're traveling in terms of driving and planes, whatever else, throw your headphones on, listen to some of your favorite podcasts, even books on tape, like a Seth Godin book, for example. So take advantage of the time that you're actually traveling for work and continue to grow and invest in yourself, even if nobody else is asking you to do so.
Awesome. Loved it. Loved it. Now I'm gonna check those two. So Seth Godin and Jim Quick, right?
That's right.
Well, my last question, Adam, is where can our audience find you online?
Yeah, so I'm available on numerous social media platforms. Obviously, from a professional standpoint, LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me. So I do look at it on a pretty much a daily basis to see what's happening in the industry. I really like staying connected with colleagues, but also industry friends as well. So LinkedIn would probably be the best place to connect and to stay connected as well.
Adam, thanks a lot for your time and mostly for all the great insights you brought us. I'm sure that everyone that is here still with us, listening to the conversation, took great insights and great value from this conversation. I really appreciate it. And for everyone that is there in the audience, thanks for your company. And I hope to see you on our next episode. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.